noteworthy events mark the dawn of American history. The settlement of Jamestown in Virginia, the arrival of the Pilgrims in Massachusetts, and the founding of what is now New York City by the Dutch colonists. It was for commercial reasons, not religious ones, that the Dutch settled the area. But with these pioneers came their church, a church that has survived on these shores continuously for nearly 400 years, the Reformed Church in America. In 1609, Henry Hudson, an Englishman employed by the Dutch East India Company, set sail on the Half Moon in search of a new route to the Orient by way of the north. Blocked by ice as he traveled northeast, Hudson was forced to turn west. Sighting land near Chesapeake Bay, he sailed north along the shore and anchored in the bay now known as Sandy Hook. By 1614, 6 years before the Pilgrims' landing at Plymouth, the Dutch were trading with the Indians along the Hudson River. In 1624, the Dutch West India Company began to colonize the area. Although scattered at first, a group of colonists came together on the southern tip of Manhattan, an island of hills and streams where Indians hunted and fished. The colonists, who numbered only about 200, established Fort Amsterdam and began to build houses in the area.
You may not know this, but Wall Street gets its name from an actual wall. It was a wall that was built on Manhattan Island. It spanned from the Hudson River to the East River. I think lots of times when people walk down Wall Street, they aren't aware at all of the history that's beneath their feet, that at Wall Street there was once a wall. The wall itself was made with 12 feet poles, cedar poles, sharpened at the top, and they were planted into the ground, probably were about 10 feet high or so, and at the base would have been about waist-high support of dirt and rocks.
The first place of worship for the Reformed Church was just down the road in the loft of a gristmill. The mill was used to grind bark for the tanning industry.
Monday through Friday was a gathering place for a lot of the local merchants, for fur traders, for fur trappers. But on Sunday, you would walk up the stairs to the second floor, the upper room of the horse mill, and that's where the church services were held. The mill church is known today as the Collegiate Church, the founding church of the Reformed Church in America. In 1628, Domine Jonas Michaelius, an ordained minister from the Dutch Reformed Church, set sail from Holland for New Amsterdam.
The voyage was difficult and perilous, especially about the Bermudas and the rough coast of this country. Our treatment on board was rather severe and mean, through the fault of a very wicked and ungodly cook and of our skipper, Evert Kruger.
After 12 weeks at sea, Michaelius landed in New Amsterdam, the most multinational port in the New World.
On the first Sunday after his arrival, they walked up to the second floor of the mill and they held the first church service, the first Protestant church service in North America, and really the first Christian church service in New York City. So this is the site of that mill church.
At the first administration of the Lord's Supper, we had fully 50 communicants, Walloons and Dutch, a number of whom made their first confession of faith before us. I administered the Lord's Supper to the Walloons in the French language, and according to the French mode, with a sermon preceding, which I had before me in writing, so long as I cannot trust myself extemporaneously.
Within 5 years, the mill stopped being used for worship, and a small, plain wooden church, described as a barn, was built on Pearl Street. The Reformed Church's second minister, Everatus Bogaerts, arrived from the Netherlands. During his tenure, the first permanent church was built. Known as the Church in the Fort, the stone structure was popularly called St. Nicholas Church.
Interesting how the money was raised for the church. Well, it was a wedding. The wedding of Sarah Roloff, the stepdaughter of the minister, and Hans Kierstead, a young doctor.
And after the ceremony, there was a party, and there was lots of drinking at the party, and someone decided, well, this is time to raise money for the church. And so after the first or second round of drinks, pledges started to roll, and maybe people thought they were only going to pledge 1 or 2 guilders, while pretty soon they were pledging 100 guilders each.
They didn't come to their senses until the next morning, and by then it was too late. Some of them balked. They didn't want to pay what they had pledged the day before, but they finally did, and that's how the money for the St. Nicholas Church was raised.
The church's slate roof, spire, and weathercock towered over the walls of the fort. They were the first sight seen as ships sailed into the harbor.
The St. Nicholas Church is a very important place in terms of American culture, and that's because it's really the place where the Christmas tradition as we know it began. Washington Irving, who popularized St. Nicholas in the early 19th century, actually lived in the neighborhood of the St. Nicholas Church. Clement Clark Moore also lived not too far, a little further up Manhattan Island. Most people don't think of New York City when they think of Santa Claus and the North Pole, but the truth is the birth of Santa took place right here, and primarily at the St. Nicholas Church. The St. Nicholas Church is also remembered for a period that brought in other cultures. Some of my own ancestors were baptized during that period. One in particular, whose name was Manuel, Nicholas Manuel. His parents were from Angola, and baptized in 1649. He was given the name of the church, Nicholas Manuel.
Much of this can be attributed to Sarah Roloff. Hers is one of the little-known stories of important women in American church history.
Sarah was a translator very often for the military. She would be there to translate treaties. She sponsored black baptisms, especially during a period when the church was really moving away from its acceptance of blacks being baptized. Sarah owned a piece of property in Manhattan that eventually became the African burial ground.
In 1991, when they were excavating for a new federal office building, they found some of the remains. They first found just a few, and then finally they found 20 or 30, 100, 200, 300, finally 427 remains were taken out of the burial ground.
The second Reformed congregation to be organized was 160 miles north at Fort Orange, the present city of Albany. Here in 1642, Johannes Megapolensis came as its first minister. His annual salary was $400, plus 22 bushels of wheat and 2 casks of butter. Megapolensis, who also served the congregation at New Amsterdam, soon became interested in preaching to the Mohawk Indians. Although he complained about learning the language, he is said to have mastered it.
Though they are so cruel to their enemies, they are very friendly to us, and we have no dread of them. We go with them into the woods. We meet with each other, sometimes at an hour or two's walk from any houses, and think no more about it than if I met with a Christian. I tell them that I am admonishing the Christians that they must not steal, nor commit lewdness, nor get drunk, nor commit murder. And they too ought not to do these things, and that I intend in process of time to preach the same to them.
First Church in Albany houses a baptismal record dating back to the 1690s that shows the names of Mohawk Indians admitted to membership in that early congregation. With Dutch Reformed churches springing up all over the region, the congregation at New Amsterdam called a second minister, Samuel Drisius. Drisius was able to preach in Dutch, German, English, and French.
During the next decade, the 2 pastors really served the general area, not only New Amsterdam, but Brooklyn, New Jersey, a new community on Manhattan called New Harlem. They basically went 2 by 2. And that became the basis of the collegiate church. So on any given Sunday, they would either walk several miles or ride. If they were lucky, perhaps a member of the congregation might row the boat across the East River to Brooklyn, or row the boat across the Hudson River to New Jersey.
In 1664, Dutch rule ended and the English took control of the colony. New Amsterdam gave way to New York, but worship continued in the fort for nearly 30 years. In 1696, King William III of England granted a full charter to the Collegiate Church, establishing the church as the first corporation in colonial North America. The charter gave Collegiate the right to own property and also the right to receive legacies and other donations for the benefit of the church. In the mid-1700s, the Reformed Church played a significant part in the Great Awakening, a spiritual revival which spread through the colonies. In New Jersey, the fervent preaching of Theodorus Jacobus Frelinghuysen, a Reformed Church pastor, brought thousands of early Americans, including large numbers of African Americans, to repentance and faith. Frelinghuysen's preaching was anything but gentle.
Come hither, ye careless, at ease in sin, ye carnal and earthly minded, ye unchaste whoremongers, adulterers, ye proud, haughty men and women, ye devotees of pleasure, drunkards, gamblers, ye disobedient, ye wicked rejectors of the gospel. The period of grace has concluded, for ye shall be cast into that lake which burns with fire and brimstone, where there is weeping and gnashing of teeth.
As waves of new Reformed Church immigrants arrived and settled on the frontier westward, the church moved with them. At the time of the Revolution, there were 98 Dutch Reformed congregations, 41 clergy, and 45,000 baptized members. On July 9, 1776, at Middle Collegiate Church, a great cast-iron bell, known today as New York's Liberty Bell, announced the signing of the Declaration of Independence in Philadelphia 5 days earlier. It tolled again for the inauguration of George Washington and for the funerals of Abraham Lincoln and Martin Luther King.